Have you ever seen two people so used to living together that their body movements become subconsciously synced? In the midst of the GQ interview, there were tiny details, domestic habits that usually stay behind closed doors, suddenly catching the eye on camera. Small gestures, the way they share space, and body language that feels all too familiar. Is this proof of a daily routine being carried over into the public eye? Watch the continuation of this video and don't miss it. Before we start, make sure you're ready to love this moments. Welcome to VKook. ARMY thought they had seen everything from that interview. Every laugh, every answer, every small interaction between the members seemed completely normal at first, but then someone slowed the video down. Just a few seconds. A moment so quick that almost everyone missed it. Right there in the middle of the GQ interview, while everyone else was talking and smiling, Taehyung suddenly looked at Jungkook. Not just a casual glance. It was intense, quiet, almost unreadable. Fans immediately started replaying that exact moment again and again, frame by frame, because the longer you watch it, the stranger it feels. The room is full of noise, yet that one look feels like everything else disappears. And now ARMY everywhere is asking the same question. Was that just a random glance? Or did that 3-second moment reveal something fans were never supposed to notice? For a moment, nothing seemed unusual. The interview continued like any other conversation. Light laughter, playful teasing, casual answers. The members spoke naturally, occasionally interrupting each other the way they always did. To a normal viewer, it looked like another comfortable moment between people who had spent years growing up together under the same spotlight. But the internet rarely watches things only once. Somewhere, a fan slowed the clip down, not because they expected to find something shocking, but because curiosity has always been the quiet engine of fandom. One replay turned into 2. 2 became 10. Then suddenly, the moment began spreading across timelines like a whisper that refused to stay quiet. The camera had shifted slightly during the conversation. Jungkook was speaking, calm and focused, answering a question with that familiar, thoughtful tone that fans knew so well. The others were listening, some nodding, some smiling, and then there was Taehyung. First it looked ordinary. He sat there relaxed, his posture casual. But as Jungkook continued talking, something about Taehyung's expression changed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his eyes moved. Not toward the interviewer, not toward the camera, but toward Jungkook. And he didn't look away. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. It wasn't a playful glance or the kind of quick look people give during group interviews. This was different. His gaze was steady, quiet, deep enough that fans began to pause the video again and again, trying to understand what they were seeing. Because the longer you look at that moment, the harder it becomes to ignore. Taehyung's expression wasn't smiling. It wasn't joking. It wasn't exaggerated for the camera. If anything, it looked serious, almost too serious for such a casual conversation. Meanwhile, Jungkook kept speaking, completely focused on answering the question. His voice remained calm, his expression composed. But right as he finished a sentence, something strange happened. For a split second, Jungkook glanced sideways straight toward Taehyung. The timing was so precise that fans immediately began debating it. Was it coincidence? Did Jungkook simply notice someone looking at him? Or had he already felt that gaze before he turned his head? The moment lasted less than a heartbeat, but the tension inside those frames felt much longer. Because the second Jungkook's eyes moved in Taehyung's direction, Taehyung looked away, not dramatically, just enough to break the moment. The conversation continued immediately after that. Someone else laughed. Another member added a comment. The interviewer moved on to the next question as if nothing unusual had happened. But by then, fans had already seen it. And once something like that appears on the internet, it never really disappears. Clips of the moment began circulating everywhere. Some people slowed it down to half speed. Others zoomed in on Taehyung's expression. A few even compared it to older interviews, trying to see if similar moments had happened before. The reactions were completely divided. Some fans insisted it meant nothing, just a normal interaction between friends who had known each other for over a decade. After all, in a group that close, glances like that could happen naturally. But others weren't convinced because when they replayed the footage, they noticed something else. Taehyung's face before the moment looked relaxed, casual. But during that 3-second stare, his expression shifted into something far more intense. His eyes didn't blink. His focus didn't move. It looked almost like he had completely tuned out everything else happening in the room. Even the interviewer's voice, even the cameras. Just Jungkook. And that's when the theories began getting louder. Some people described it as admiration. Others called it curiosity. A few even claimed it looked like a silent conversation that happened without a single word being spoken. But there was one detail that made the moment even harder to explain. After Jungkook finished talking and the conversation moved on, Taehyung suddenly smiled again. That easy, familiar smile everyone recognized instantly. As if nothing had happened. As if those few seconds never existed. And yet the camera had already captured them. Which is why fans kept replaying the clip late into the night, pausing and analyzing every frame. Not because they wanted to create drama, but because something about that moment felt too real to ignore. It was subtle, almost invisible, but powerful enough that thousands of people watching the same few seconds came away with the exact same feeling. Something had shifted in that room. Something quiet, something unspoken. And the strangest part of all, the interview itself never acknowledged it. The conversation flowed smoothly until the very end. Everyone laughed together. The mood stayed warm, relaxed, completely normal. But that tiny moment, those 3 silent seconds between Taehyung and Jungkook, remained frozen in the middle of it all like a secret hidden in plain sight. And now, days later, fans are still asking the same uneasy question. If that moment truly meant nothing, then why does it feel like the camera accidentally captured something it was never meant to show? The clip should have faded away like thousands of other interview moments, but it didn't. Instead, the more people watched it, the more unsettling it became. At first, fans focused only on Taehyung's stare, the intensity of it, the way his expression seemed to freeze while everyone else in the room kept moving naturally. But after hours of replaying the footage, someone noticed another detail hiding inside the same moment. Jungkook's reaction. Not the quick glance everyone had already talked about, but something earlier. Right before Jungkook turned his head. In the original clip, it happened so quickly that it blended into the conversation. Jungkook was speaking confidently, answering the interviewer's question without hesitation. But if you slow the video down to half speed, something strange appears. For a split second, Jungkook pauses. Not long enough for anyone in the room to notice. Not long enough to interrupt the conversation, but long enough to exist. His sentence breaks for the smallest fraction of time. His eyes shift downward briefly, like someone who suddenly becomes aware of something, before continuing the answer. And then seconds later, he turns his head straight toward Taehyung. That tiny pause changed everything, because now the moment didn't look like coincidence anymore. It looked like awareness. Fans immediately began debating the timeline of those few seconds. Some argued Jungkook must have felt Taehyung looking at him even before turning his head. Others believed it was simply a natural pause during speech. But when the clip was analyzed frame by frame, another detail appeared. Taehyung never looked away first. Even when Jungkook's sentence paused, Taehyung's eyes were still fixed on him, unmoving, focused, almost like he was studying something only he could see. That discovery spread through fan communities faster than the original clip itself. People began posting side-by-side comparisons, zooming into Taehyung's expression and Jungkook's brief pause in the conversation. Suddenly, the moment didn't feel random anymore. It felt connected. The tension inside those few seconds started to feel heavier with every replay. Because there was another question nobody could answer. If Taehyung's gaze was so intense, why didn't anyone else in the room react? The interview setting wasn't large. The members were sitting close together, easily within each other's view. Normally, when someone stares that directly in a small group conversation, someone notices, someone jokes, someone breaks the moment. But in this case, no one did. The others continued listening to Jungkook without interruption. The interviewer kept nodding calmly. The atmosphere never changed except for that silent exchange. And that's when some fans started looking at the rest of the interview again. Not just the famous 3-second moment, but the entire conversation. That's when they noticed something even stranger. Taehyung wasn't looking at Jungkook only once. The viral clip showed the longest stare, the one impossible to ignore. But scattered throughout the interview were several smaller moments where Taehyung's eyes drifted in Jungkook's direction for brief seconds before returning to the conversation. Short, subtle, easy to miss. But once someone pointed it out, it became impossible to unsee. Meanwhile, Jungkook seemed completely focused on the interview most of the time, calm, composed, answering questions with confidence. Yet every now and then his eyes would move slightly, as if checking something beside him. Not long enough to feel deliberate, just enough to raise another question. Was he aware of it? Or was it simply instinct between people who have spent years in the same space, learning each other's smallest habits without even realizing it? The debate quickly split fans into two sides. Some believe the entire thing was overanalyzed. After all, cameras capture thousands of tiny interactions during interviews. A look, a glance, a pause. Any of them could mean nothing. But others weren't convinced because the more the clip spread, the more viewers described the same feeling. That moment didn't look staged. It didn't look exaggerated. If anything, it looked too real, too quiet, too unguarded for a setting filled with cameras and bright lights. And then another detail emerged. Near the end of the interview, long after the viral moment had already passed, the members began joking about something unrelated. The atmosphere turned playful again. Full of laughter, Jungkook leaned slightly forward while reacting to the conversation, and in that instant, the camera briefly caught Taehyung again watching him. This time the look was softer, almost thoughtful, but it lasted only a second before Taehyung joined the laughter like nothing unusual had happened. For most viewers, it was just another natural reaction in a long interview. But for the fans who had already seen the earlier moment, it felt different because now the famous 3-second stare didn't feel isolated anymore. It felt like the center of something larger. A quiet thread running through the entire conversation. Something subtle enough that only the camera could capture it. Something that might never have been noticed if one fan hadn't slowed the video down out of pure curiosity. And now the clip continues circulating everywhere, gathering millions of views, thousands of comments, and one question that nobody seems able to answer. Because if that intense moment between Taehyung and Jungkook was truly meaningless, then why does it look like both of them knew exactly when it happened? The internet should have moved on by now. Another clip, another theory, another moment lost in the endless stream of content fans consume every day. But this one refused to disappear. Instead, the more people revisited the interview, the more the atmosphere of that room started to feel different. Not dramatic, not obvious, just slightly heavier than it should have been. What made the moment so unsettling wasn't the stare itself. People look at each other all the time during interviews. Friends glance at friends. Teammates watch each other speak. But Taehyung didn't look like someone casually listening. He looked like someone observing. And once that idea entered people's minds, everything about the clip began to shift. Fans started asking a simple question. What exactly was happening in the conversation when that moment occurred? The interviewer had asked Jungkook about growth, about how the members had changed over the years, how their bond evolved after everything they experienced together. It was a reflective question, not dramatic, not controversial, but Jungkook's answer had been unusually sincere. Leave your positive comments here. The best comment will be pinned as a way to honor their love. Thank you to everyone who continues to support this channel. May God reward all of your kindness. This video reflects my personal opinion and interpretation. It is made for entertainment purposes only and does not represent confirmed facts.